History used to be simple. It happened, someone wrote it down, and that was that. Case closed, chisel down. Then science showed up with a shovel, a lab coat, and, well, zero respect for a closed case. And it has spent the last century making history rewrite its own homework. Today, on Guess What I Found Out, we are looking at 5 times science grabbed the history books and started making corrections nobody asked for, including one where a shepherd bored enough to throw a rock into a cave accidentally validated a 2,000-year-old paper trail, and one where a frozen tube of ancient snow proved the entire planet can lose its temperature mind in about 10 years. Stick around, because by the end of this one, you will trust textbooks about as much as you trust a group chat playing telephone. Before we get into it, if you caught last week's video, you know we spent an entire episode picking apart that stat everyone loves repeating, the one where humans are supposedly 99% genetically identical to chimps. Turns out even numbers everybody agrees on can be oversimplified nonsense dressed up as settled science. Well, Curious George, history has been getting the same treatment, and it is way more dramatic. If you are new here, hit subscribe now, because we do this twice a week, and your Notes app is going to thank you. First up, the ancient cheat sheet, better known as the Rosetta Stone. In 1799, a French lieutenant named Pierre-François Bouchard was overseeing fort renovations in Egypt when his crew tore down a wall and found a slab covered in writing hiding behind it, in Egyptian hieroglyphs, in a script called Demotic, and in Greek. Scholars finally had a translation key. For centuries before this discovery, experts were convinced hieroglyphs were not even a real language. They assumed the birds and eyes and squiggles were just symbolic doodles, mystical picture stories with no actual grammar behind them, closer to fortune-telling than a genuine alphabet. It took until the 1820s and a scholar named Jean-François Champollion to finally prove hieroglyphs were a full phonetic writing system, sounds and all, not spiritual clip art. An entire academic field spent generations confidently wrong, and one soldier accidentally moving one wall is the reason that ancient cheat sheet ever saw daylight again. Next, the Viking mood ring, otherwise known as the sunstone. We already know Vikings reached North America long before Columbus, but here is the mystery: they had no magnetic compass. That technology would not reach Europe for another century. So how do you sail west across open ocean with nothing but the sun to guide you, especially when it is cloudy for half the week-long trip? Old Norse sagas claim Vikings used sunstones, crystals that could locate the sun even through clouds, and for years historians dismissed that as pure legend, because no such stone had ever turned up in a shipwreck. Then, in 2002, divers found a milky white crystal sitting next to a compass in a 16th century shipwreck off the coast of Alderney. In 2011, a research team led by Guy Ropars tested whether that type of crystal, a form of calcite, could actually pinpoint the sun's position on an overcast day. And it worked with shocking accuracy, using a property called birefringence to split light and reveal exactly where the sun was hiding. Other scientists have struggled to fully replicate those results since, so the jury is still deliberating on whether that mood ring actually worked. But a myth just became a genuine possibility. And honestly, Curious George, that is the best kind of plot twist. Speaking of things nobody saw coming, here is where this episode gets weird, because our third discovery accidentally invented the boy band 500 years early. For centuries, Western history credited a Swiss family with building the first programmable robot, a writing doll from 1774. Except a scholar named Ismail Al-Jazari beat them to it in the year 1206. His book described over 50 working machines, including a floating quartet of musical robots, a flute player, a harpist, and 2 percussionists, built to entertain guests at royal drinking parties, and the percussionist's rhythm could actually be reprogrammed by rearranging a set of internal pegs. That is the original boy band, and it predates the supposedly first programmable machine by over 500 years. Western scholars simply never translated his work into English until 1973, because for centuries they treated anything coming out of the Islamic Golden Age as a lesser derivative of the Greeks, not worth serious study. Comment below and tell us which discovery in this list shocked you the most, because I genuinely cannot decide between the boy band robots and what is coming up next. Because next is Earth's frozen diary, and this one is a mood swing. Scientists drill cylinders of ancient ice out of glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica, and each layer is basically a time-stamped weather report, complete with trapped air bubbles holding actual samples of ancient atmosphere. If you remember our Krakatoa episode about the quiet neighbour that blew its top, this is the same idea, ash and gas signatures locked in place, except ice cores can date the event almost to the year. In 2025, an international project called Beyond Epica drilled almost 2 miles down at a site called Little Dome C and pulled up a core holding at least 1.2 million years of climate history. But here is the twist that broke assumptions completely. Scientists always figured Earth crawled out of ice ages gradually, over thousands of peaceful years. The ice said otherwise. At one point, temperatures spiked 15 degrees Fahrenheit in a single decade, more than half the total warming needed to end an entire ice age, all crammed into about 10 years. That same ice also confirmed current carbon dioxide and methane levels are the highest they have been in at least 800,000 years. Earth's frozen diary does not always change its mind slowly. Sometimes it throws a tantrum. And finally, the desert's backup drive, the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, a bored shepherd named Muhammad threw a rock into a cave near the Dead Sea, expecting a thud, and instead heard pottery shatter. Inside were ancient scrolls that would eventually multiply into 981 manuscripts found across 11 caves near the ruins of Qumran. Before this, historians assumed 2 things: that ancient Judaism was one tidy, unified religion, and that the Bible had been sloppily copied and altered for 1,000 years like an ancient game of telephone. The scrolls proved both assumptions wrong, but in opposite directions. About a third of the manuscripts turned out to be from sects and traditions nobody even knew existed, proving religious practice back then was wildly diverse, full of competing groups with their own rules and beliefs. Yet the actual biblical text among the scrolls barely changed at all across 1,000 years of hand copying, just minor spelling differences here and there. So historians were wrong about the diversity and wrong about the sloppiness, in the exact opposite way they expected, and it all came down to a shepherd, a rock, and the world's most reliable backup drive. So that is 5 times science handed history a very awkward correction, and honestly there could easily be 5 more. Every single one of these started with someone refusing to just accept the accepted answer, whether that was a soldier, a shepherd, or a scientist standing in a hole in Antarctica. If today taught us anything, it is that the story is never actually finished being written. If this scratched the same itch as our last video, go ahead and revisit that chimp DNA breakdown, because once you start questioning the numbers everyone repeats, it is genuinely hard to stop. Smash that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and drop a comment with your pick for the most shocking discovery on this list. We will see you next time. See you there, Curious George.